You are listening to the Lawyer Stories podcast with host Benny Gold. Lawyer Stories was founded in July 2017 on Instagram and is an expanding global network of lawyers and law students sharing their personal journeys to the noble profession of the practice of law. Join us on this podcast as we dig deeper into these stories and hear from lawyers and law students from around the world in all areas of the legal profession. Here at Lawyer Stories, we believe that every lawyer has a story. What's yours?
Welcome to the Lawyer Stories podcast with Benny Gold. Today we welcome in Jay Kobak, CEO and co-founder at FiveStar Legal Funding, LLC, based out of New York, helping clients everywhere. Non-compounding, low-cost, lawyer-friendly. FiveStar specializes in pre- and post-suit settlement, non-recourse advances to plaintiffs seeking financial assistance. Jay, how are you? Thanks for coming in.
How you doing, Benny? Thanks for having me.
Good, good. Nice to see you. Nice to finally meet you. Before we, take off and start asking you some questions, I just want to thank you for all your support with Lawyer Stories. We love having you guys on board as a partner for us for our events. We'll do the best we can to get you out there. FiveStar Legal Funding. Jeff, who unfortunately couldn't join us tonight, great guy. We've had a nice time partnering with him as well. So thanks very much for your support.
It's my pleasure. Jeff is my fraternity brother and regional New England man about the town. And like I said, I go back with Jeff probably about 35 years. So
Yeah,
he's a good dude.
that's the way to do it. I love that. I think I think stories of like friendship like that sort of tell us what kind of I think it tells us what kind of a business person you could be if you have that sort of like allegiance to a friend for so long and a fraternity brother. I mean, I know I have longtime friends too like that, so that's really cool that you guys work together. And Jeff was part of the Boston and Miami event, and now New York City coming
We're
up May
coming.
1st is the trifecta, the hat trick for you hockey fans out there. We're looking forward to it. It's going to be a great time.
We will be there. I'm looking forward. New York's my my home base and where I grew up, and it's where probably 70% of our business, 60 to 70% of our business is. So I'm looking forward to it. And something just to add real quick, I know you had said about people who you work with and stuff like that. So at Five Star Legal Funding, just to give you a little background, we're started just about everybody is somebody at our company, meaning I started the company with my best friend. I'm Jay Kobak, and I started with Rob Gentili. We were partners on Wall Street for over 10 years as financial advisors. And then when we got into this, we started this together. So, like I said, best friend from the sixth grade on. One of our other top guys, Jason Miller, had joined us afterwards, and we knew him in high school. He was at the rival high school, but similar neighborhood, and he joined us about 5 or 6 years into the venture. And then Chris Malika joined us, another partner of ours, and he was Rob and my partner on Wall Street from way back. And then he joined us as we needed help and we were getting bigger. And then fast forward, and you have Jeff, who's my fraternity brother, and you have a cousin of mine and my partner's brother-in-law. Our paralegals that we have working, with us have been with us now from almost the beginning, 15, 16 years.
Yep,
Everybody who's with us is basically somebody,
I love that.
a friend, a relative. So when people say, "Oh, don't do business with friends and relatives," I always had the other take on it. If you are who you are and you're a genuine guy, it's not going to be an issue. So
Yeah,
we've had, like I said, the same people, consistency. All our clients, which are the lawyers, see that it's the normal, regular thing. When you start dealing with one of us, you deal with us all throughout. You're not dealing with an operator. You're getting one of us.
that's amazing. I'm glad you pointed that out. That's so important. So tell us a little bit about yourself. You said 60 to 70% of business in New York City, but I know you're elsewhere as well. Like,
Mhm.
what's your background? You're a New Yorker.
I'm a
Um,
New Yorker, born and raised on Long Island. Five towns actually, Hewlett, and over the course of time, I now live in Merrick. We had moved last few years, but I spend my time between Florida. I'm in Delray Beach right now.
Nice.
About 10 years ago, we merged, and our parent company, U.S. Claims, is now based out of Boca. We have about 150 people under one roof. At the old IBM corporate center down here. So, we do, whether it's submissions or collections, we have all our underwriters. We have about 20 underwriters that are
Wow.
solely working for us, which is important, which I guess we'll talk about later. But I always say I bring that up because um, solely working for us, real quick, the difference is rivals don't necessarily have that. They will contract out the work to underwrite the business. And the minute you do that, the work goes into other people's hands, other lawyers. And if those lawyers happen to be another personal injury attorney that's looking at their rival's file, well, now they have that information. And we like to try to keep the information under the hood, tight to the vest. How a lawyer gets their cases is their business. However they advertise, however they bring it on, and it's nobody else's business. So what we do is, like I said, the 20 underwriters work solely for us under our roof, and the information, almost like HIPAA, with medicine,
Yeah.
it's staying locked down, and it's not getting out into other people's hands.
What are the underwriters doing exactly there?
Yeah, so the underwriters, what'll happen is you're an attorney. So let's
Yep.
just say you're a personal injury attorney and you have a client. The client needs some pre settlement money just to get them by a few grand, or maybe they don't have insurance and they need to go for a knee surgery and you need to get $7,500 paid for a surgery. So you'll call me up and you'll say, "Hey, Jay, got this case for you. Let's say it was a car accident, rear-ended at a light. I have the police report. I have all this other information. I have a recommendation from the doctor for the surgery. I have MRI showing knee tears. I got to get you all this information. And then please, if you can, there's an invoice also for the surgery.
Hmm.
Please underwrite it and get back to me and let me know if you could fund this."
Okay.
So, sure enough, I will take all that information. I will give it to one of my underwriters. The underwriter will look at it. If the underwriter has questions, obviously they're going to shoot me back the questions, which I'll come to you and say, "Can you just, connect the dots for me?"
Right.
If they come back and they say, "Well, we have everything, the dots connect, it all makes sense, sounds great. Okay, we could do that." And then I'll issue a contract, and the contract will be for the surgery. And we basically what we're doing is we're paying for the surgery on behalf of the client.
Hmm.
The check will go straight to the doctor. Now the client can call the doctor, say, "I want to make an appointment for my surgery,"
Right.
and the doctor will say, "Okay," because they're paid. So,
Right.
and that's when the case is over. If the case loses, I lose my money. But if the case wins, I get my money back plus the interest that it states in the contract.
Wow. Okay. So that's interesting. You
That's
lose
how
your
it works.
money if it doesn't win.
If the case loses or comes in way under, if we, let's say, value a case at $1 million, but we overfund the case, we're going to lose money on that too. But let's just say if the case loses for whatever reason, we lose our money.
Okay. All right. And we'll talk about interest and stuff like that.
Sure.
But that's okay. So that's interesting. I'm glad you told us that. So you've been with Five Star Legal Funding for over 19 years. Pretty incredible. You had some jobs, or not even jobs. I mean, you had other professions beforehand. You were a financial advisor, right?
Hmm.
Like, tell us about that on Wall Street.
Yep. So out of college, my partner Rob Gentili went to Wall Street, joined a firm, and started to learn and build his book in financial advising. And then didn't know what I quite wanted to do yet because, like I told you, I was pre-med. My father was a surgeon, so I was still thinking if I wanted to go to med school or not. And Rob, my partner, basically convinced me. He's like, "Listen, why don't you just come to Wall Street with me, get your licenses, and we'll go partners." At that point, he had already met Chris Malika, who works with us now,
Okay.
and they had gone partners. So I joined the fray basically. And slowly but surely, we built the business over 10 years. With, basically we didn't want to be stock jockeys, as they call them. Now there's no such thing because, you're not people. If you're going to trade stock, you'd open up an online account. But back then there was no online account. So there
Right.
were stockbrokers out there where if you wanted to buy and sell Pepsi and Microsoft, you had to call somebody and say, buy, sell, buy, sell. We didn't like that because that to us was just, it just wasn't a way to build a business. So what we did was we always say know your customer, right? Know the game that you're in and know what you're doing. Just know and build that plan. And what we said was, what can we do? How can we do things a little bit different to stake our claim? Which is what we did it with Five Star Legal Funding and other businesses along the way. So here, what we said was when we were on Wall Street was, let's build people's wealth in a way where I don't want to sit there and live by the phone.
Mm.
So we went, and my father was always, before there were podcasts, there was
Yeah.
my father would get up and lecture, and people wanted to see him lecture because of his notoriety in the surgery field and foot and ankle surgery. So my father would always, at the end of a lot of um, a lot of his lecturing, would say, and if everybody here basically wants to see how I keep my money, I'm going to bring up my son. So I would get up and talk in front
Oh,
of
wow.
hundreds and hundreds of doctors about wealth preservation.
Wow.
This was latter 90s, maybe mid to latter 90s. Um, and then a lot of these doctors, as you know, just like lawyers, they're not businessmen.
Right. Right.
So they know how to make the money, but they don't know how to keep it.
Right.
So we basically went through and said, hey, listen, give us your pensions. I always said doctors were always very, very poor, cash poor in the now, but they were rich when they turned 60.
Mm.
Because they were always taught, because they weren't business guys. There was, again, and back then there wasn't financial advisors like there is now. You asked your CPA, you asked your accountant, what do I do? And the accountant said, well, to get the max deduction, stuff your pension, stuff your IRA,
Right.
stuff your
Right.
SEP by right. So doctors did what they did, and the doctors did it also because everybody, they were told at the time, it's a malpractice proof that if you ever get sued, they can't touch your pension. Almost like if you go back, you're a lawyer, the O.J. Simpson story, he
Yeah.
lost the civil suit and they couldn't touch his pension, his football
Right.
pension. So doctors were very big on, you know what, that's right, I'm stuffing the pension. And the doctor was very open to your ideas of what we wanted to sell them at the time, and what insurance products, what mutual funds, bonds, because they knew, well, if they were in their 30s or 40s or even 50s, they can't touch the money till 59 and three
Right.
quarters by
Right.
law.
Right. Right.
So they're like, okay, I got a big time horizon. Okay, whatever you said makes sense. Okay, I'll give it a shot. I don't care. Can't touch the money. It's not affecting my life now.
Sure.
Most people are very short-sighted. They can't see 30 years in the future. So we were very good at accumulating doctors' wealth and their pensions, which became every year. Well, now it's tax time. I wouldn't have to solicit people for money because I would get a phone call saying, "Oh, by the way, have to make my pension contribution. Here's 60 grand. Here's 100 grand. Here's 200 grand. Here's 50 grand. Here's 5 grand," and all our money would just come in over that time.
Wow.
And then they would say, "Well, what are we going to do with it?" We already had a plan, and we went in. So we were very good at finding our little niche. And then, we did that for about 10 years, but we also stretched it into lawyers at the time.
Okay.
And when we stretched it into lawyers, said, what's the next thing after doctors, and talking at doctors' conventions. And well, lawyers are very similar. We found they were smarter in the business sense of things because they were negotiators by trade, right?
Mhm.
But they still needed a little help. And then we started, getting into the lawyer phase, and we built a really, really big book and a really, really big business. And then as time went on, it was just, more about the big firms would say, we don't want you giving advice to clients anymore. We just want you as asset gatherers. We have experts here behind the scenes. You'll just get a couple of points on the money, and you just get. So it was very hard for me to sell you if I was sitting down with you, Benny Gold, the lawyer, saying, "Hey, give me your money. I want let me invest your money. Give me your pension." You'd be like, "Okay, what are you going to put in it? What are you going to do?" And I'm going to be like, "I don't know. I got to speak to the bigwigs at my firm. I'm already a bigwig. I already made it there, but they want me to just basically say, no, no." They were telling me to basically push you into whatever JP Morgan wanted me to
So
push
you
you
were at a
into.
firm. You weren't like on your own. You were at a firm.
So
Like,
we started out at a firm, and eventually I had my own independent branch,
gotcha.
which was under it was First Union Bank at first, then it was Wachovia Securities,
Okay.
then I moved to AIG. They
And
had
so they basically structured how you were going to do things with the money, with money.
they wanted a
Okay.
structure because it was almost, basically they didn't want malpractice, right? They didn't want the people, now it's starting to get, the world's changing.
Right.
Hey, sue. Like you said, you held
Yeah.
up the thing before.
Yeah.
A lawyer sue was like, oh, has your financial advisor lost your money? We'll sue him.
Yeah.
And the big firms didn't want that liability.
So much
So what they
stress, man. Every
oh,
time I meet like a financial, I'm just like, that is just so much stress. I mean, taking somebody's money
now
and having to
it's
do right by
harder.
them, like,
Well, that's why for us it was great. My license, I'm always very proud to point this out. Me and my partners, we'd let them go. We didn't need them anymore, but it's public record. We never had an inquiry on our licenses, which was, if you think about it, for at the time a 20 some odd year old guy,
yeah,
young guy, it's unheard of because
right.
there's always some markets are going up and down. The minute the market goes down and you get slammed, and then you're watching TV and the big firm says, "Hey, has your advisor lost your money? We'll sue."
Yeah.
Even if it's found to be that it didn't happen, it's still on your license that somebody inquired, even though it was found as a no. I never had any inquiries,
Yeah.
so I can knock on wood. I don't have to knock on
That's
wood
good.
anymore, but
Yeah.
that was it. I had no, and why. So that's the main thing. I say why, and this is
So,
important for me to tell you because we do that now in business, because at the time we weren't transactional. We were going after bonds, mutual funds. The things that I was doing really hadn't. It wasn't. It wasn't due to the market swings. I wasn't putting people's money in financial jeopardy. So these people came to me at times and said, when the market was really high and things rocketed, they would come to me and they would say, "Hey, Jay, I should be 10 times wealthier." Because I was happy clipping along at 7%, 8%, 10%, 6%, whatever the year had to
right,
be,
right.
based upon a fixed rate of return, basically.
Yeah.
But then when the market shit the bed, then I used to get, oh my God, I was the greatest thing since Swiss cheese. So I actually did better for my clients in their minds
Yep.
in down markets. They didn't understand because they would hear their friends at dinner stating, "Ah, millions my financial advisor made me." And they would look at me and be like, "What are you doing?" And I'd be like, "Just wait." And sure enough, financial crisis, this crisis,
Yep.
that crisis,
Yep.
9/11, something happens and the financial world's upside down. And they said, "Wow, Jay and Rob and Chris, they're the greatest things since Swiss cheese." Why?
Right.
Because what I had them in bonds. The bonds didn't move. They were happy
Yeah.
now getting 5-6% triple tax free.
Yeah.
So
No, for sure. And like Jay, I think it's incredible that you have such a good like background for this, like what you do now. Like you have such a
mhm.
like a really good foundation, probably more than that. I mean, you're very knowledgeable with all this thing. You had clients, you were at the big firms, you worked on Wall Street, and then like so. What is there anything else about that? Because I want to ask you a little bit about FiveStar now, and
Yeah,
what it was like when you first started it, and why you did it.
sure.
Like why you
So
transitioned off of that of financial planning.
so as the world was, I appreciate the question. It's a good one. As the world was changing, we decided to do the same thing. So we sold the business. It was quantifiable. We had a very big book, and we just didn't want to. I felt that, as you see, talking to me, it's hard to muzzle me. So if I'm going to work and I'm just going to be there as a salesman for somebody like another company and raise money and then let them do it,
Right.
and I'm going to go to all my network of people, and on an everyday basis, if they screw up, the firm screws up. again, big names. Like I'm talking about like big bank names, not like some local Dewey Cheatham and Howe type stuff. But if if JP Morgan,
Yeah.
let's just say I wasn't there, but I'm just giving it for the sake of the thing. JP Morgan, and I'm raising all this money and they're making the mistakes. What am I supposed to do? Come back to you, Benny Gold, the lawyer, and be like, well, I was just a conduit. I didn't
Right.
want to
Right.
be a conduit. I felt
Right.
like I had a lot more to offer,
That's good.
being me, being genuine, being,
Yeah.
I'm a
Yeah.
warm guy.
I like
So
that, man. I like that a lot. That's good.
yeah,
I think that's important. You got to highlight that. I think that's great.
so what we did was we a friend of mine, very close friend of mine, who I always say went to Michigan. He was Ross School of Business. We always said he was the smart one, and he went there and he was on Wall Street as an investment banker. So
Okay.
he started the first specialty trading desk on Wall Street, at Bear Stearns at the time. And he was doing, when you used to hear about the annuity buyouts, the viatical settlements and stuff like that. He was very big, and he was the money basically behind Peachtree Financial Settlements. They were funding lotto tickets and buying pieces of annuities and buying pieces of people's life insurance policies, things like that.
Mhm.
um, Basically math, as you were saying. They were buying. Well, if we borrow from this, from over here, this financial institution, and we take that and we're going to borrow at X, we're going to buy a revenue stream at Y, and then we can make Z. It's all spreads.
Right.
Um, and my buddy said, what I saw is something that's very, very profitable is this legal funding thing. And
Mhm.
I didn't know about legal funding, but I understood it. So when he explained it to
Okay.
me, I understood it because, again, my father, now I'm going to dovetail back. My father was a surgeon. So although he wasn't involved, I'll call it, in this game, my father was, because of his he was triple board certified, stuff like that, and his reputation. He did a lot of expert testimony for
Okay.
lawyers.
Sure. Sure. Yep.
So I always say, if you called my father and you put him on the stand and you were a lawyer, it was like, well, if he was the guy that taught everybody else the surgery, who was the defense going to supposed to get? So in easier speaking, if you and I were partners, we're lawyers, and we get Michael Jordan to come up on the stand as our expert witness,
Nice.
who's the other side supposed to get to win the case?
Right.
LeBron? No. Like Wilt Chamberlain? Maybe. Like who are they going to get? Larry Bird? Well, it's still not Michael Jordan. So where are they going to go? So anyway, I knew because my father was very, with me, he was very animated, and we would talk about a lot of things. And although he was doctor, um, this was kind of business. So he taught me that, like, when he was reviewing these records and prepping himself to go to court, I was always kind of reading with him and learning, and I was just always very inquisitive that way. So I
Okay.
had an idea of what this was, and um, and I saw there was a need. So when my buddy told me, I started sniffing around,
Okay.
and I start looking around. I start looking around, and I was very big on, just like they say, the key to a successful salesman is curing the other person's problem. If you're just going to sell them, you're never going to be a good salesman. You have to figure out what their problem is and say,
Right.
"Oh, you have paper. Write me a letter. You can't. Well, here's the pen." That's, you have to. How are you going to solve their issue? So on Wall Street, we figured out was, why can't we just be nice? Like I don't have to be that slick, Gordon Gecko, slick my hair back, big shot with the cigar or whatever.
Right.
I want to be me. I want to go to the guy who has a $50,000 IRA, $100,000 IRA, and treat him just like the guy with 10 million that had 10 million with us. Why? How do I know what the $50,000 guy has? How do I know? How do I know if he doesn't have a great Uncle Joe who's going to pass away and leave him money? How do I know he doesn't refer me his great Uncle Joe? I don't know. You never know. Someone
Right.
starts
I
off
love
small, they
that.
wind
That's
up
so
big.
true.
So you treat everybody the same. You can't look at it as, well, I took Benny Gold to dinner 5 times and it cost me $500, and I have only a $50,000 IRA from Benny.
Yep.
and I only made $100 off of it. I'm minus 400. You got to look at the full picture. You
Right.
treat everybody the same, and as long as the math comes out, it's all math again. As long as the math comes out on the plus side, then you're fine. And you keep doing, and you treat people how you want to be treated.
Right.
That's where I think this world is right now. Is a problem is that people don't treat others like they really want to be treated at the end of the day.
It's true.
So now we come into the lawyers, and I said that I said, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to call a buddy of mine who I went to high school with. He was a senior actually when I was a freshman. Think about this now, but he was in
Yeah.
my neighborhood, and he was a very prominent New York attorney, and he was the incoming president to the New York State Trial Lawyers Association.
Nice. Okay.
So I called him up. Said, Mike, you remember me, Jay Kobak, little Jay Kobak? At the time I was little.
Hmm.
And he says, yeah, sure. What's doing? I said, listen, I got to meet you. He goes, I'm busy. I can't meet you. Listen, thanks for taking my call, but I got to talk to you. What? I said, I'm looking to start a legal funding company. He goes, oh, like every other Tom, Dick, and Harry, don't do it. You're going to fail.
Yeah.
What? Holy cow.
Oh,
Mike, I
geez.
said, Mike, I need your help. In the end, we met, and I took him and about 20 lawyers to dinner,
Nice.
all prominent New York trial lawyers, the big of the big, all on the board of NISLA, New York State Trial Lawyers Association, or incoming to the board, or whatever it was. Guys and girls, boys, men and women who lecture to the organization, and continuing education credits and all that stuff. So top people. And I sat down at dinner with them and I said, listen, this is what I want to do. And of course, they're throwing tomatoes at me and laughing and, all this. I said, listen, obviously there's a need for this. And obviously you guys don't like it. What can I do in order to change the industry and help you? I did this on Wall Street. I did this with other things. Why don't you tell me what I can do? And if this is my deal to everybody, and I had a pad and pen out. You tell me, each one of you, I'm going to go around, each one of you give me an idea. That's 20 ideas. If I can do this and I can get all this right, and then I got to go and I got to see if I can borrow the money at the proper rates to make the proper spread. I said, but let me see if I can come back to you. And if I can come back to you and I can do at least 18 out of 20 of these, then I'm going to start the company. And everybody here has to agree to give me their business. Fair enough. If we already established that all of you don't like the legal funding industry, you've already established that everybody here doesn't like who they currently use, and we already established everybody here that you all have a complaint. Log the complaints with me as if I'm the grievance board, and then let me see if I could get really address them. But
Wow.
I'm going to need a year.
I
So
feel
they're
like
like, yeah,
Jay, I
yeah,
feel like doing
yeah,
that is like what people should normally do when they want to start
yeah.
a business. Like the way that you surveyed all 20 of these people, like that's something that people should do. Like normally, like if they want to get into a business, let me get 20 people who are like, experts in the area of the field, ask them what they need, what I'm missing, solve the problem. So go on. So you said
Yeah,
after a
why?
year, you said give me a year.
Give me a year. And of course, now I told them, give me a year. So think about it. You're a trial lawyer. You're sitting around the table, and some little nebbish like myself is sitting there, stating, I want your business in a year, not tomorrow. I'm not calling you for a year. And I
Yep.
said, I'm only going to call you as if I have a question that I need you to answer for me to help me. Otherwise, I'm not asking you for business for 1 year. So if you'd say, 1 year. Yeah, sure. We'll worry about this in a year, you know?
Right, right.
But I knew what I had going on. I knew I was in no rush to start the business, and I didn't want to make mistakes. The one thing I knew from Wall Street, when I'd already spoken to some people on Wall Street about getting the money. I needed the money in order to put into the cases.
Right.
I knew that they needed certain safe controls on things, and that if I made a mistake or two, well, then we lose the money, and someone's got to pay them back. So where does that fall on? All the money and all my success on Wall Street was going to get flushed in the toilet, me and my
Yeah.
partners.
Yeah. Wow.
So that's why we were in no rush. I said, this can't make a mistake here. So sure enough, we went around the table. The first guy says, the rates are too high. The compounding nature of the rates are way too high.
Okay.
Okay, write that down. Get it going. Compounding rates. So I wrote down right when I wrote down compounding rates. Now that we're talking, Benny, I should, if I have the original pad with the notes, would be
Oh, I'm sure
interesting.
you do.
I'm pretty sure I know they're in a file. I know where they are, and it would be interesting because I remember writing down. I wrote down, compounding rates. Can we get them non-compounding? And
And
then the
that
next
became
guy,
one of your big things, though, too. Like the first
yes,
person nailed it on the head, right? Because, like, from
yes,
what I remember, like about five-star legal funding is like you really changed the game with compounding legal rates. I would probably need you. I want to hear the rest of the story, and then
yep,
maybe you can explain that whole thing to me. But go ahead.
I
I want
will.
to hear this. So the first
I
guy says,
actually, as an aside, I recently went up to a competitor. We were at a similar party. We had mutual friends. And I went over to him and we started talking. And I just said, "Hey, I haven't really met you, kind of in passing a few times, but it's nice to meet you." And I said, how's everything?" And he goes, "Terrible." I said,
"Really?
"Why?" I said, "Things." I said, "It's a great industry. What's going on? What can I do?" He goes, "You could leave the industry." I said, "What? What?" I said, "What? What happened?" And he goes, "You ruined the industry." I said, "Ruin the industry? I think I helped it." No. He says to me, he goes, "No." He goes, "The minute you changed from compounding and you changed, you did not compounding,
Right,
you took away a lot of people's profit." He
right,
goes, and then you put a cap on things. He goes, and then I had to cap things. He goes, so
right.
when you came in, you made it terrible for us. I said, honestly, I said, I'm sorry, but the client and the lawyer comes first, not my competition. I was
Yeah,
just, so
yeah.
I walked away, but it was an interesting take on, yeah, things suck and you stink and you ruined it for us type thing.
Yeah. Well,
Um, so yeah, the second guy says, the advances run up too high. So what do you mean? He says, well, if the client took 10,000 and it goes too far, and it goes too long, and the case goes 5 years, 10,000 could be worth 50, could be worth 60, could be worth 70, even with non-compounding rates.
wow.
I said, well, what if I put a cap on it? He goes, cap would be good. What can you cap at? And I remember saying, I said, I don't know. I have to see where my spreads are first. If it's, I feel like I'm Costco, right? Like Costco, they always say, they pass the savings. It's all in the fees. Join the service of the club. Join the club, and we're just going to pass the savings to you. So that's really what I did when I was able to get 2 times cap. Sometimes it's 2.5% cap because certain cases take a little bit longer.
What
But
does
we
that,
cap
Jay, what does that mean? Two times.
means that the client will never pay more than 2 times what they were advanced.
Okay.
So other companies, if they don't cap something, right now, as you know, because this is just the world, litigation is getting further and further. There are cases out there,
Yeah.
6, 7, 8, 9, they'll stretch it forever.
Crazy.
Now think about it. In year one, if they borrow $10,000, they may owe me 100 at the end of time.
Right.
It's ridiculous, and it's not ridiculous. It's ridiculous because why should someone take 10,000 and pay back 100? But let's call a spade here. It was, let's call it 7 years for the sake of argument. And B, you know, hey, I'm paying interest on this. Like it's not just, I didn't give you $10,000 and now it's worth 70. I'm paying interest. So there's a spread, but what is that spread? So I just said, listen, I have to figure out a way how I can cap this that even if the case goes 10 years, it's not out of hand. If they borrow 10 in 10 years, I don't want to use the word borrow, it's an advance. If they advanced year one, year two, year three, and now it's year seven, and they only owe 2 times, that's beyond fair. I'm actually, I thought people don't realize it, but I start to lose money because what happens is the money will double after about 3.5, about 3 years, let's call it.
What they owe,
But
you mean? Their advance? Yeah.
they're advanced.
Okay.
So if 10,000 at 3 years, 10,000 is worth 20. Well, what happens if the case goes 3 more years and I'm not charging interest? I'm paying the bank interest.
Right.
So it's the law of diminishing returns, as we always learned
So is it like
in school.
you're trying to make it all even out or something? Like you have some cases that are like not as
Listen, the bottom line is what we figured out over the course of a long time. And this is the math that you may have to be a little bit smarter than you and I to understand. But
yeah.
I always say, but like at the end of the day, if you make two times on every advance, no matter how long things go, you're going to make money and you'll do well.
Yeah.
Again, you got to control your loss rate, but that's basically the math of it. But I'm able, because I have I knew a lot of people on Wall Street. I was able to borrow the money much cheaper than my competitors. My competitors are borrowing the money much higher, so they couldn't lower their rates. They're just starting to try to come after me,
Right.
because if there's no spread, you can't be in the business.
So like take another company like
Yeah.
doesn't cap it.
Hmm.
Say somebody use the $10,000 and
Hmm.
somebody's case goes on for 7 years. Like what they get advanced the $10,000 to do what they needed to do. After 7 years at a different company, what would this person owe?
So again, math, but let's just say they're charging 3% a month
Yeah.
compounded. 3% a month compounded becomes, I don't know, 60% a year or some kind of wacko number. So again, if the difference is, if in 7 years, if 10,000 is worth, let's just call it 100 for them,
Yeah.
I'm at 20. I can
Right,
never
right.
break 20. So even if they go to 30, if they go to 40, if they go to 50, if they go
I
to
mean, how do
70,
they even pay that back? Does that come out of their settlement? Like, how the hell
yeah,
do they even pay that back? I mean, what if they
right
don't
out of,
even get? What if the settlement isn't even like that
well,
high?
that's where my actuaries and underwriters come in. We
Okay,
will
so
not.
you'll only look at a case it's gonna come back like
Yes and no. We will only advance up to 10% of what the um we will only advance up to 10% of what we think the expected value of the
okay.
case is.
All right, that helps. Thank you.
Not what you tell me it is, because let's say you're the lawyer, you're going to be gung ho. Jay, this is $1 million case. Yeah, you're going to want it to be a million. This is a very conservative estimate. What my lawyer tells me it's
And
worth.
is the 10% up to 10%, is that of what the case you think the case can be worth? Um is that after like the compound?
No. So in other words, if we think the case is worth 100,000,
Yep.
I will probably go up to, again, it depends on the history of the lawyer, their payback schedules and stuff.
Wow.
Let's say it's a good one, a good lawyer that I know for 20 years, and he pays back, he doesn't ask for cuts, he doesn't lose cases. I'll go up to 15%.
Yep.
So the lawyer, the client on $100,000 case could probably get his hands on, if needed, 15,000
Got it. Okay.
plus,
That helps.
plus
That makes
interest.
sense. Thank you.
Yeah, plus
Um
interest.
so tell us like what so five-star legal well actually I want you to finish the
Yeah,
story about the guys at the table.
yeah. So we went to the table. Everybody gave me, their advice, and then I went out to the street and I said, look, let me see if I can do this. And I was able to I was able to execute. I went back to everybody at the table, and slowly but surely they started to give me their business. And within
Really?
I'd say about 3 years, not everybody jumped to right away, but in about 3 years, I had about 18 of the 20 of those
Wow,
20.
that's
Yeah.
pretty good close rate.
It was pretty good. It took 3 years though. I had other lawyers. Don't get me wrong. We were
Yep.
going after other lawyers, but this was, and then with that, we recently, when I say recently, about 5 years ago, I got the 19th, and about 2 years ago, very recently, it was a woman, and I finally got the 20th. And I said,
That's
after all
crazy.
these
How'd you
years, I
do that?
said,
That's like
well,
unheard of, man.
she was when I say she was the hardest, but she was easy. In once that I got to that, I said, listen, and I don't want to use a name, but I said, listen, I said, between you and I said, you were there that night for dinner. I have 19 of the 20, and you're the 20th. You're the only one that eludes me. I said, why don't you want to use me?
Yeah.
I said, do you want to be known as the only one who doesn't use the best? And she's like, fair enough. You got me. And
All
then
right.
she's been beyond loyal for the last, 2, 3
Wow.
years.
That's a great story. I love
Is
that.
that great?
Yeah.
So
Where'd you go to lunch? Like, do you remember where it was? Like, dude.
the dinner, I could tell you where
Yeah.
the dinner was.
Yeah.
So what I did was we went to dinner at Morton's
Wow.
Steakhouse in it was I think it was Midtown New York City,
Amazing.
and we took an upstairs. It was like, I don't want to say a room, but it was like an upstairs thing where nobody was there. And one of my go-tos, even now, I'm a very big sports fanatic.
Okay,
Um,
good.
and I still play baseball. I still play hardball. I play old man Jewish softball. I
Oh,
do it
that's
all.
amazing. I love softball, man. I just gave it up like a couple years. Anyway, we'll talk about that
Yeah.
later.
I still play hardball and I still pitch. But
That's awesome.
I play with some ex-major leaguers
No
and
kidding.
I'm friends with a lot of ex-major leaguers.
No kidding.
So anyway, I'm friends with a lot of athletes. So at that time, I was very close with Tiki Barber.
Okay.
And I invited Tiki Barber to that dinner.
Oh, no kidding.
So to sign autographs and just get everybody to the dinner.
That's wicked cool.
So, and we're still friendly. I helped him with some business
Does
ideas. He
Tiki
likes,
Barber want to come to an event on May 1st? Or
how's
anybody
this?
anybody that you know, any athletes?
How's this? I can't get Tiki, I don't think, because it's a long story, but I could ask him, but I can probably bring an ex-Yankee or two.
Wow, that'd be awesome.
Which if you want, we could discuss later, who come to events for me. And they'll take pictures, they'll sign autographs, they'll tell stories if you want to bring them up. They'll do whatever you want. Old, champions who played with Jeter and so on and so forth. I know a lot of guys who are close friends of mine who come to dinners with me. They work with me, I work with them.
That's awesome. Yeah, we'll
And
talk
it's
about that. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll talk about it. But I use that as, so I always say, uh, today's necessities, tomorrow's luxuries. Did
Okay.
I get that right? No. Today's luxuries are tomorrow's necessities. I always screw that up. So back in the day, to take someone to a steak dinner when I was on Wall Street was like a big deal. Oh, you're taking them to Spark Steakhouse. You're taking them here. You're taking them there. I want to go with Jay and Rob and Chris, and I want a steak. After a while, everybody's going to eat steak. There's steakhouses all over the place. You don't need me to take you. You don't want me to take you.
Yeah.
So I had to come up with the next thing. And I'm always thinking, like, well, what's the next thing? The next thing is, well, if I bring their favorite athlete
Yeah, that's fucking awesome.
to dinner, and it's just four of us, and they see that I didn't pay the athlete necessarily, like he's my friend, then it's kind of intimate and they love it. And they're like, well, who's next?
Jay, can I just tell you something funny? Like
Yeah.
just like a
Yeah.
side thing, sort of a side story, but
Yeah.
real quick. So, like about a month ago or so, 2 months ago, here in North Central Mass, I got this email. I could tell you about it after, but basically, long story short, I went to this community chamber of commerce meeting because Andre Reed was going to be speaking. I went through my book of football cards, found four Andre Reeds in a row, and literally, I was the schmuck who walked in with a plastic bag of Andre Reed cards, going to get his autograph. I was like,
Hey,
"It's great,
he
man."
don't care.
You know what it was? It was Wild Card Weekend. I was like, "This is the coolest time to meet you." Wild Card Weekend, kicking it off.
Hall of Fame.
He was a
Hall
nice
of
guy,
Fame.
man. I got a couple cards autographed.
Hall of Fame wide receiver.
Yeah, I was like, "What's
Yeah.
he doing up in North Central Mass?" I'm like, "Sign me up for
Yeah.
that thing," you know?
Listen, I can come. I can bring a stack of cards. They'll sign. Listen, I'm friends with Doc Gooden. I'm
Oh,
friends
dude,
with
I love
so
the
many.
doc. Well, let me see what I
I'll,
thought.
s- I have a closet full of Doc stuff. I'll send you some Doc stuff
Dude,
if you want.
Doc and Daryl Strawberry was my favorite growing up.
So Daryl, I'm not as close with.
But
I know I met him.
Doc was like a
Doc is.
close second when I was living in Maine. I don't want to get too far off. When I was a
I
little
get it.
kid, the Tidewater Tides came up to play the Maine Guides, and Doc Gooden played. I never forget because he was recovering from an injury, so like Doc Gooden came up to play up in Maine. That was like a big thing. Like, and so we went to see him. But no, he's like one of my favorites. Doc and Gooden, Doc and Strawberry. And
Yeah.
but anyway, all right. Let's
So I get all these athletes and I bring them to dinner. I
yeah.
bring them to events. I bring
Smart.
them places, and they just. I once went to a Christmas, like almost like if you did a lawyer stories and it was a legal organization, but like if lawyer stories had a Christmas party and I walked in with Doc Gooden, and that's what I did. Every lawyer is coming running over to me, and then they're listening. Then you got
Well, I'll
their
have
you
Doc
got their,
Gooden cards to bring. No, but
oh, I'll
anyway.
send you a bunch. Dude, I'm not joking. I have stacks. Gooden comes to my office. He lives right near my office.
Oh,
He
really?
comes, he sign. I have whatever you want, Gooden. I got. Trust me. I'll get you
That's
that.
crazy.
That's
Yeah,
my pleasure.
yeah.
So
Wicked
yeah, so
cool.
you always have to think of ways to attract, like I said, today's
It's smart.
luxuries are tomorrow's necessities. And eventually this will run its course. And someone's going to say to me, well, what's next, Jay? When they don't want to meet any more players. But right now it hasn't, because not only the lawyers then say, oh, my kids want to meet this person. I want to introduce
Now,
my,
let me tell you something. I think sports right now, like I've turned to people, board members in my office at work, at my full-time job, and everybody's so caught up with like politics and like yelling at each other on Facebook and like doing that. Like I've literally turned to people and been like, man, thank goodness for sports. You know what
yeah,
I
of
mean?
course.
Because so everybody wants to. I mean, I do. I mean, I'm like a kid. I love to meet these people and talk to them, and I think that. So I think that's a great tactic, actually.
It's a, you know, at first, the lawyer is skeptical. Then as they get there, their inner kid comes out, and they sit there, and I'm having let's call it baseball cards signed, and jerseys signed, and bats and balls. I bring it all,
Yeah.
and they walk out with like one of everything, and they're just. What I'll do is, let's just say the Knicks are in the playoffs, okay, and if the Knicks are in the playoffs and they hit a big shot, it's a big thing, whatever. I know I could pull up, especially now in my phone. I have next to every lawyer who their favorite athletes, teams, you name it, all important information.
Yeah.
So I know I'll just write the word Knicks in the search, and 100 lawyers will come up, and then I'll
Smart.
realize, okay, and then what I'll do is I will FedEx them or drop off a signed Charles Oakley jersey
Yeah.
on their
Yep.
doorstep,
Yep.
or Larry Johnson or John Starks or whatever I have. And if all of a sudden, like during the Yankee playoffs, and Giancarlo Stanton hits a big home run, next thing I know, I got Jim Leyritz stuff going all over the place, and said, "Hey, in honor of the big home run, there was no one
Great.
bigger than Jim Leyritz. Here's some Jim Leyritz cards. Here's Jim Leyritz ball. I have a clot. Leyritz is a good friend of mine. I have stuff all over the place.
Yeah.
So
Crazy.
now all of a sudden, I'm adding that to the mix, and it's like, oh, what's next? What's next? What's next? And my key is, it can never be considered a payoff. We're not doing even. Oh, you give me 10 cases, I'll give you this. It's just, hey, tell me what you like, and every once in a while, I'm going to send a gift over that's a $50, $70,
I
something.
don't.
It's not.
Why would anybody look at it like that? You're basically personalizing a relationship with one of your clients or
Yes,
friends.
but
I mean,
so what I do is I'm taking my stockbroker, financial advisor hat that
yep.
I learned on Wall Street, where it's like, any gift up to about $100, anything after 100 can be considered a payoff.
Gotcha.
Now, between you and I,
Sure.
we know something different, that it's not, but I just don't want it, if I can
No, it's
fix
an
the
ethical
problem
thing.
before we get there, hey,
I'm I work for like a government agency, so like I can't accept gifts over $50, or it can be
right,
considered
there you go.
influence for a contract or something like that. So I
Mhm.
get it. I totally get it.
And there's no legal rule that tells me this in this industry.
Right.
I just go by it, because why not?
Yeah.
Why not? So if anybody, I had somebody recently tell me, I don't know, it was a competitor. Every time I go up against a lawyer that you've been working with for a long time, I can't steal them. They said, you got to be paying them off.
Yeah.
I said, no. I said, you wanted me to tell you why you can't get them? They said, why? I said, two reasons. A, your rates aren't as good as mine. But let's say they are. They said, okay. They said, because I told them I would drop my rates. I said, there's your key. Because if I could teach a competitor, I'll teach a competitor. Okay, I said, the key is, so you'll charge more to the lawyers you can. You'll screw who you can. But this lawyer, in order to leave me, you'll drop the rates for them. The
Yeah.
key is, I don't drop my rates. I don't play with my rates. My rates, I put on my website. They're there. I don't change them for anybody. Because if I change them for Benny Gold, and then all of a sudden you talk to the guy that I've been dealing with for 15 years,
Right.
but I want to do a business, I charge him more. They're going to call me up and say, "Hi, I bumped into Benny at dinner. He says you charge him less. Why? I want the same deal for my clients.
Right.
I don't play favorites. Everybody's got the same."
So you
And then
treat clients equally.
everybody's got to be equal. And here's the key.
Good.
I told the competitor, "You ready, Benny?"
Yeah.
I said, "You're not me." They said, "Well, what do you mean? I'm a nice guy." I said, "No, no, no. You're not me." I said, "Because at the end of the day, This is my key to sales. We'll go off on a little tangent. And like in the Wolf of Wall Street, like you said here, sell me the pen.
Yeah.
I have a little bit of a different thing. At the end of the day, I like to think every salesman is selling the same thing. Okay. If you're selling, I don't even want to use pens because that was the Wolf of Wall. We're selling hats. Okay. So here's my little 5-star hat. I'll do a shameless plug. Okay.
No,
5-star
it's
legal
a nice
funding.
one. Yeah.
Right. Nice one. 5-star legal funding. Shameless plug. Um, if I'm selling hats and I come to you, Benny, and I want you to get you to do lawyer story hats, let's go. And I come into you, and the first guy comes into you, let's say, and says, "Oh, buy my hat," and then I come into you the next day, buy my hat. Okay, what's special about the hat? Well, it's Velcro over here, not Velcro. It's elastic here, and it's this, and it's got a special brim, and we're selling the same thing at the end of the day. Maybe his is a little bit better than mine, and mine's better than his. Whatever. Who are you going to give the business to, assuming the rates are the same, the price is the same, whatever it is? You're going
Yep.
to go with who you like.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
that's,
That's
that's
right.
what it comes
That's
down to.
right. That's
I'm
right.
not selling hats. This is what a salesman doesn't realize. I'm not selling hats. I'm not selling this pen. I'm not selling this iPhone. I'm not selling this iced tea. I'm selling me.
Yeah.
And,
That's
and
it.
and again, if you don't have to sell yourself, I like to think I'm not selling me. I'm just being me.
And you know what's,
So
yeah.
if my competitor is trying to sell himself or herself, they're not going to beat me. You have to be, like I say, that person
Yes.
that people like.
And that
So
goes back to fraternity with Jeff. I mean, it
there
goes
it
all the
goes.
way back
Yes.
there. I mean, so I agree with you 100%. It's the person, like
It's the
that
person.
you're with.
That's why
Yeah.
you say, "Oh, Jay, tell me, what does it take to be a successful salesman?" And some of this has to go with your upbringing. Did your parents bring you up right? Did they
Right.
teach you certain things? Did your grandparents teach you certain things? How did you grow? I don't know how everybody grew up differently. I grew up in a very tight family. My grandparents were around. I didn't lose my first grandparent until I was 35. I was very fortunate. And
Wow.
they both lived around the corner from me.
Yeah.
So I had a very tight, loving family. So I think in a kind to that, I was a very warm person
Yeah.
because I was taught, got to go over and see your grandparents, got to see your aunt and uncles, got to see your cousins. They're around the corner. Let's go. Everything was about that. It was
Yeah.
always about family. It was always about, hey mom, I'm going out. Okay, I'm gonna go see my friends. I'm gonna stop by grandma and grandpa on the way home. I'm gonna stop by this one, that one, whatever it was. That's me. So if you want to try to outsell me, you could try to outsell me. But what makes me, I think, a very good salesman and a very good, I'll call it account rep, forget business owner,
Right.
is that I'm not trying. I'm just being me. What you
Yeah.
see is what you get. And why I was always told you're never going to grow this business the way you think. Because I said, I'm not advertising to the customer, the client, so to speak. I'm advertising to the lawyer. I want the lawyer. And they said, you can't tell. How many lawyers can Jay Kobak, Rob Gentili, Chris Malika, Jason Miller, how many lawyers can they know? You want to know something? I knew a lot. I deal with 300 nationwide lawyers.
Wow.
And I could pretty much tell you that if I'm just saying, if I was friends with every one of them on LinkedIn, well, Facebook or Instagram, whatever the story was, and you and I sat down and you say, Jay, how do you know this one? How do you know that one? People make fun of me within my own company. Well, they'd be like, hey, this is another one of your fraternity brothers. This is another one of your friends. Did you go to high school with this one? Is this your
Yeah.
uncle's brother's sister? Is this your sister's brother's uncle? Because I was able to, listen, Facebook and LinkedIn, people laugh a lot of times like, oh, social media. I use it for different because you can
Right.
see, oh, wait a second. Benny knows that guy. I've been trying to get him forever.
Right.
And that's how Jeff got started a little bit. And that's how where I was able to make some phone calls through LinkedIn, through Facebook, mutual friends, and be like, wait a second, this is good. Because now, if let's say Benny, you call a good friend of yours and say, I'm signing off on Jay Kobak. I
Yep.
know Jay for 20 years and he's great. And he will not let you down. And I won't let Benny down because Benny's going out on a limb for me. That's why, like you said, I'm still with the same people. The same people. They're all in my things. I can make that phone call. And people who work for me don't understand it because if you can't do it, you don't understand it.
Right.
I again, I was fortunate because this wasn't something I planned, and the kids of this generation can't do it because of social media, everything's a text. But
Yeah.
because
That's
when you and
true. I
I were
know.
young, if I wanted to call you up and go to the playground, I had to call you up and dial a phone number, right? Remember the phone number or a
Yeah. Oh
phone
yeah.
booth
Oh yeah.
with a cord? My
Yeah.
son has no idea what a phone cord
Yeah.
is.
No.
And I would call up, "Hi, Mrs. Gold. This is Jay Kobak. Can Benny come out and play? I mean, that's
Right.
really, can he meet me at the schoolyard so we could shoot some hoops?" "Oh, I'm sorry, Jay. Benny's doing his homework right now. What's your phone number? I'll have him call you back." "Oh, my phone number is 555-1212." "Okay, great. Please tell your mother I say hello." "Oh, I will, Mrs. Gold. Thank you."
Yeah.
And I would sit. I
I
couldn't
know.
then jump around. Think about this. I didn't want to go outside and shoot hoops outside my house. I may miss your call.
Right.
Kids forget. They have a text. Oh, I could do anything now. And this minute
If you hear the
Benny
phone
texts me.
ringing, you got to run in the
Well,
house, get the phone.
I sat there like this,
Yeah.
staring at the phone, waiting for Benny to call me, so
Yeah.
I didn't miss him. Otherwise, I'm shooting hoops by myself.
That's right.
To me, we thought that was ridiculous, and Benny and I, you may think that this was great. This was the downfall to this generation
Yeah.
because they don't. I tell my son a lot when let's say we're going to dinner, and I don't. He's learning all sides of the business, but a lot of times I don't want him when we're going to go out and take lawyers out to dinner. I don't want him going on the
Yeah.
website to Morton's and putting in table of four and with the open table and making reservation. I want him making the phone call to say, "Hi, this is Jordan Kobak
Right.
of FiveStar Legal Funding. I'm coming in with a table of four. We're bringing in a couple of clients. Can you please give me a nice quiet table in the corner? I'd really appreciate it. 8 o'clock on Tuesday." "Yes, sounds good, Mr. Kobeck. What's your phone number?" But he, and not only him, the whole generation needs the interaction where everything becomes very impersonal right here.
Yeah. No, I agree. I agree.
Right.
100%.
So
Yeah.
this is what I'm trying to get through to my friends' kids all the time. I talk to my friends' kids all the time. They call me, go call Uncle Jay, call Uncle Jay. They call me up, and I'm trying. What am I doing wrong? I'm trying to tell them the phone is good, but get on the phone. A lot of times, even my son or a friend will be like, "Oh, I'll email the head of this division within our own company. I'll email,
Yeah.
I'll text."
Yeah.
Get on the phone, call
Yeah.
them, establish a relationship
Right.
with that person, even though they work for us. They want to work for someone they know and can
Right.
picture.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not Jay Kobak, the owner, but Jay Kobak or Jordan called you, asked you how your day was, and some light laughs and kidding around, and then got to the crux of what the issue, and then they'll be more than happy to get it done. It's all about how you, again, treat people how you want to be
Right.
treated.
Right. And
The
I think,
phone, too impersonal.
yeah, I think you guys have tremendous. Obviously, I'm not even going to ask you if customer service is important to you. Obviously, like you guys have tremendous customer
The
service.
number one, to me, the number one thing is customer service. There is nothing else to me. I don't care how big I get. I will treat you like a mom and pop. Not like you're a mom and pop, like I'm the mom and pop.
Right. Right.
And to give you an example, I don't sit here and say I'm the CEO and co-founder of the company. You'll never deal with me. If you meet me, if I come to the next when I come to the next lawyer stories and I meet someone, they're gonna deal with me, never an
Yeah.
operator. I have plenty of account reps, but I ain't passing them off. I don't care if they're good for one case a month or they're good for 100 cases a month. They're dealing with me or my son, obviously, will help me or my part. You're going to get an owner. Like
Right.
you're always gonna be handled with kick gloves.
Yeah. No, that's great. I love that.
Listen, Benny, it's a small industry. If someone gets something screwed up, the next time they're at Lawyer Stories or the New York State Trial Lawyers Association or one of these big things, the word gets out, you're done. You're done. So, and that's the other thing is I built myself up with the biggest givers, or they call them partners at the New York State Trial Lawyers Association with
Right.
Skyline members. There's nobody higher than a Skyline member. I can't say enough good about what the New York State Trial Lawyer Association does for lawyers and their partners in the state of New York, keeping things how they have to be, within the industry of all legal forms. So yeah,
That's awesome. No, I
customer
know.
service.
What's that? Customer service. It's all
Yeah,
about.
I beat the table on customer service all the time, all
What
the
does it?
time.
What does it? What does it mean to you for 10 consecutive years to be rated as the number one legal funding company in New York and New York State? Law Journal reader rankings as voted on by lawyers. Like, what does that mean to you to be like number?
It's when it's real funny, and I'm going to tell you. I'm going to dovetail to a quick story when we were first starting the company. people, you could dream, and I think it's good to dream. Michael Jordan always said when he was taking his shots, like why, or Derek Jeter when he got a big hit, why did things seem so easy? Like what was it about the moment that you slowed down for you? And Michael Jordan would say, I dreamt about that a million times. So by the time I actually did it, it
Yeah.
felt like I've done
Yeah.
it
Yep.
before.
Yep.
Same thing with Jeter, same thing. So, until you do it, like I said, I'm a dreamer. I don't get jealous. Jealousy to me is my kryptonite. I'm a very all-inclusive person. So, um, because of that, I look at it, if Benny, if something nice or good happens to you and you called me up and you said, "Hey Jay, just got this beautiful new car, beautiful new boat, whatever it is," and you said, come on over," and I go running over. Nobody's going to be happier for you than me. And I want to, hey, bring me along. Call me up as many times as you want. I'll go for a drive or a ride. Or I want to
Yep.
go. Come on, invite me. I'm in.
That's
I
awesome.
use it as inspiration, if I like it, of course,
Yep.
to go do the same thing. Whereas the failure comes when someone gets jealous of it. Benny invited me over to see his nice new house. No, no, no. I saw it. I get inspired. I want to do more.
Yeah.
So Billy Joel was playing at Shea Stadium. It was the last play at Shea, and then they were knocking it down. And it was in the very beginning of we were a couple of years in, and we only had a couple of lawyers, and me and my partner was sitting at the concert, and we had just somebody paid back a case. We put out 2,000, we got back, let's call it 4,000. So
Okay.
we had $2,000 in profit. So instead of putting it back into the business at that moment, I always say you have to treat yourself good every once in a while, because if you don't, then it's always work, 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 and you're not going to enjoy work. You have
Right.
to
Right.
associate certain things. And that's why I could tell you this story right now. People go, "How do you remember these stories?" I said, "Remember them because we closed that case, we made our money, and then we went to do this to celebrate."
Yep.
And it was one of the first cases that we did. And we're sitting there. We bought like seventh row seats off to the right, and right on the city field, right on the
Oh,
field.
nice.
And my partner was a diehard Met fan, and was sitting on the field. And Billy Joel, we love, is going to come out. This was great. Um, and we watched, and the concert is about to start. And I look at my partner and I said, "You see all those ads up there?" And I'm pointing up. You see Pepsi and Delta Airlines and whatever, whoever the sponsors are. So one day our name's going to be up there, and he starts laughing. He was a kid from the other side of the tracks. I
Yep.
grew up. I told you my father was a doctor, but um, I had a little bit more. But I said, we're going to have our name up there one day. And he goes, "Oh, stop it. Come on." I said, "No, I'm telling you." And then all of a sudden, the guy sitting on the aisle turned out he was a lawyer. He says, "What do you guys do? What's FiveStar Legal Funding?" So I spoke like I'm a big shot. You say you got to fake it
Yeah.
till you make it. I said, "Oh, FiveStar Legal Funding. You're a personal injury attorney?" "Yeah, I'm a personal injury attorney." I said, "Oh, well, I never heard of you guys." He said, I said, "We just we're in the business a few years, and we're dealing with all the the top things. We made a whole big thing. Meanwhile, that guy is actually still with us 20 years later. It's a funny
Wow.
story. Anyway,
That's
so I,
awesome.
I I said to my partner, I said, I want my name in lights.
Yep. Yep.
So now we're about, I want to say like 6 years in, and we're number three on the reader rankings in the New York State Law Journal. I said,
Wow.
"Whoa, we're noticed." I said, this is voted on by the lawyers of New York. We were voted a number three. I said, now we got to take off the top two. And my partner says to me, he goes, "Oh, stop it. We were lucky. This was an anomaly. Next year, we're not going to be back here. This is, I said, "I'm telling you, Rob," I said, "we got some momentum." The following September comes, and sure enough, we're number three again. Wow. I said, "Look at that. 2 years in a row, we're number three." Well, following year, now we're number two.
There you go.
Rob, same story, back and forth. Rob, we're number two again. And sure enough, 10 years in, we get the reader rankings. September comes around. I open up the Law Journal, and boom, we're number one. And I looked at
Amazing.
him and I said, "Rob, we're number one. We just beat the big boys. We just took out Law Cash. We just took out Oasis. We just took out the big boys. We're starting to get noticed here, FiveStar. We're starting to, we may have to do something, just because we need more money and so on and so forth. But that's how we started. We merged and made a deal with U.S. Claims. And now we're 5-star U.S. claims 5-star, depends on, that's a whole nother story. But and then for about 10 years in a row, it was number one, number one, number one, number one. And every year I said, I told you our name was going to be in lights eventually. And then it was
Wow, it's awesome.
I got a call from the Yankees because I was like I said, I know a lot of the Yankees and I
Yep.
still play or whatever. And I got a call from the Yankees, and I did it on purpose. I knew it wasn't really going to help us get any work, but I wasn't going to, I wasn't advertising at Yankee Stadium. It was too expensive, and it wasn't penny wise, pound foolish on that. It was just not going to make sense. So what I did was at George Steinbrenner Field in Tampa during spring training, the price was right, and behind home plate, I have the picture. They for about I don't know 6 games. It said 5-star legal funding with our number behind it. We didn't
That's
get one
awesome.
phone call, but I got a lot of. It gave me play with. I think I just saw your name behind home plate on the
Yeah.
spring training game, like stuff like that. And
Yep.
then I called my partner. I'm like, by the way, turn on Yes Network. He's like, why? Turn on Yes Network. He goes, I'm a Met fan. I don't care about Yankee spring training. I'm like,
Yep.
turn on the Yes Network, and he turned it on. And I remember Aaron Judge was up, and he goes, "What, Judge? Who cares?" I'm like, "Look behind Judge, you moron." And he looks behind Judge, and it says 5-star legal funding, and then Judge hit a home run.
That's
I said,
amazing.
"So there you go. That's a little omen." I said, "It's a good omen."
That's
And sure
awesome.
enough, we just kept going. So, like I said, I'm all about feeling it. And so the answer to your question was, how does it feel? It feels good because, listen, nobody wants to fail. And when you have a goal and you reach your goal and you keep reaching your goal and you keep reaching your goal, and you get to a point that you never could have, it was only it was only a dream. It was only a dream that you just never thought you'd attain, because, like, as you remember, when you're 15 years old, I wanted to play, be third baseman for the New York Yankees and hit the game-winning, World Series home run. That
Yep.
never happened. So, there's a lot of failure in there too, because a lot of what you wanted to, I'm sure, hit, the Boston Garden and hit that corner three like
Yeah.
Larry Bird. And that never happened either.
No.
Um, so, you know, you're used to that. I always say, like, people are used to having a lot of dreams that don't work out.
Right.
So when they kind of do, and your hustle and your hard work and all these stories I'm telling you about how to sell or what it means to sell, well, all these different things really work. Now you have, you feel good. It just gives you a good feel, And at the end of the day, let's call again a spade here. We're helping people.
Yeah.
You know what I'm
Sure.
saying?
Yeah, for
These
sure.
people don't have money and can't wait. The way I look at this is, the client is getting pushed around by the insurance company to take a small settlement.
Right.
I'm giving them the might to say, no, 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 no. You're going to pay me fair value on what my case is worth. And I can afford to do that because I'm getting, monthly money or weekly money, whatever it is,
Right.
from 5-star legal funding.
Right. Right. No, that's awesome. I think it's wow. It's amazing, Jay. Congrats on all your success, man. That's a lot.
Thank
That's
you.
that's a lot to
Thank you.
take in, man. I think you need your own podcast, to be honest with you.
Dude, I'll do it anytime you want with you. I've been thinking about it for a long time, but when I was at Adelphi, I actually had a radio show,
Okay.
on it was FM radio, WBAU in New York on Long Island. The show didn't go past, it was a sports radio show, and it didn't
Yeah.
go further than a few miles in each way. But it was, I'm Jay Kobak, he's Benny Gold, and you're on just a bit outside. Number to call, 877 six
Just a
five zero
bit. I like
three.
that. I
Eight
like
seven
that.
seven 6503. I'm here. You're there. Benny's on the other side of the glass. Call now and we'll answer all your sports questions.
Wow, that's great. Remember that too. That's
Right?
amazing.
I still remember that. To tell you, I'm a non-drinker. I'm not even a casual drinker. I don't drink wine. I'm a non-smoker.
Yep.
People kid around with me, but I'm 52 years sober, and then they think
Wow,
about
good for
that. And
you.
I'm like, I just don't drink. I drove. I kidding around. I drove Jeff around. I was a designated driver. Just
That's
wasn't my
great.
thing.
That's funny.
I
That's
don't
great.
smoke, never put anything to my lips, nothing.
No, that's great. That's good.
My hustle. People say, like, well, you don't do this. What do you do? I don't really gamble. I don't, FanDuel now or whatever,
Yeah,
but I'm not a gambler. I'm a hustler.
FanDuel too. FanDuel.
My my dopamine levels, if you want to call it, when it's not about making money, it's about the success. It's
Yeah.
about winning. It's about helping people. If I
Yeah.
can, I always said in this thing, just like I felt on Wall Street, people go to Wall Street to get rich. People go
Yep.
to Wall Street to make money. I went to Wall Street with a different view. I went, I'm going to help people save their money and make money while I'm doing it.
Yeah. Why
I'm
not?
going to make I'm going to make money at this, and while I'm making money at this, I'm going to help people.
Yep. Why not?
It's that simple. A quick story. Recently, I had a lawyer call me, and I got a case for you. I said, "Oh, okay." He says, "You got to give the woman a few grand, but here's the thing: she doesn't really leave her house too much, other than they come from Accessoride, and they take her out of her apartment and they bring her to the medical treatment. They bring her back. She has no kids, or no one comes to check on her or whatever. Where does she live? Oh, deep into the worst sections of the Bronx known to man. Okay. Well, what do you suggest? Well, she's got to sign the contract in order to get the money, and then she's not gonna. How is she gonna cash the check? I said, okay, I can see where this is going. I said, I'm going to have one of my assistants who's been with me for about 15 years. His name is
Yep.
Howard. I'm going to have Howard, he's like my right hand man. I'm going to have Howard um, go and bring the contract to her. She will sign. The minute she signs, then you'll sign. We will then have the money directly deposited into her account. Okay, sounds good. Thank you. You'll provide that service? We'll provide the service. Howard will drive into the worst section of the Bronx,
Wow.
go up to this woman's, 10-story walk up and have her sign whatever we have to do. And she was about $3,000 we were going to wire into her account. Howard goes, and while Howard's there, he texts me, says, "You're not going to believe, this woman is wasting away. She hasn't eaten. She hasn't done, I said, okay, this is the story, Howard. When you leave, I want you to go to the corner bodega,
Yep.
buy eggs, cheese, sliced ham, sliced turkey, boar's head, fruits, vegetables, milk, juice, whatever. Spend 100, $200. I don't care.
Yep.
And bring it back to the lady. Peanut butter, jelly, loaf of bread, enough to get her through a few weeks." I said, when you're done with that, then go on Instacart. And I want after like 2 weeks from now, then put it on like every 2 weeks. Send her the same order from Instacart every 2 weeks, whatever the cost is. We're not passing the cost to her. I'm not going to ask the lawyer. Whatever she owes from the money she took, but this is on us. She wouldn't let Howard leave the apartment. She made him sit down. She made him a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. She was so thrilled. She said, "Oh, Howard, I haven't eaten in weeks." Weeks? What do you mean you haven't
Wow.
eaten in weeks? She was a 70-year-old lady. She
Wow.
had
It's
no
so
money. She had
sad.
no nothing. It was so sad. And then I get a call from the lawyer. And he says, "Did you hook up Mrs. Smith?" I'll call her. "Did you hook up Mrs. Smith and start putting her on weekly food allotments?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Her case isn't going to settle to pay you back like that, like that." I said, "Who cares? Whatever it is, it is. Forget this. This will be a loss leader for maybe to help someone else. Who cares?"
Yeah.
I was like, "Are you mad that we did that?" He goes, "No, it makes me look great. What lawyer does that for their client?" I said, "No lawyer. The funding company did it."
Unbelievable.
So like I said, to me, if I can, and listen, don't get me wrong, there's plenty of dipshits just the same
Yeah.
that call and ask us for money, and aren't putting it to good use or whatever the story is. But it's not my job to figure out what they need it for. That's
Right.
not my job.
Right.
They need it, and the case can withstand it. They're going to get it.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's amazing. Yeah. No,
So,
that's awesome.
you know,
Um, Jay, all right. Well, I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to say about FiveStar. Probably, we've been going on for a little bit here.
yeah. So you know what? I'll say this. I want to thank you, Benny. And I can't wait, to see you.
Thank you.
In,
Yeah.
May 1st, I think it is.
Yep. You too.
Um, like I said, anything I could do, help your
Thank you.
podcast, get the word out, get whatever it is,
Yeah.
it's my
I'd love
pleasure.
it.
This is great. I'd love to build and grow together.
Sure.
Um, I appreciate all the questions. Like I said, it's been satisfying. It's been nice to be able to grow. And now, of course, my son is working,
It's
with
awesome.
us, and my
Yeah.
partner's daughter is working with us. She's 30 years old.
It's
My
great.
son's 24, and just kind of the next generation of building and growing the
Yeah.
business into what I like to say is a national legal funding company that's hopefully people see are changing the way the other legal funding companies are working and doing because they're going to have to. And if I could, make someone's day a little bit brighter,
Yeah.
and help, it's great. Like I said, I've been doing this for 20 years. Um, we cap all advances at 2 times. We don't compound the interest. It's 18% every 6 months. We do not compound. And like I said, you're always dealing with a partner, always a partner or an owner, never an operator. And I'd like to say we're 5-star service. That's why I named it 5-star. 5-star service, 5-star, client. Call us up. Going to have a good time. At the same time, we're going to help people, and everybody's going to do well. And that's my goal.
Yeah.
Everybody has me 24 hours,
Amazing.
24/7. My wife yells at me all the time that give me some more attention because I'm just on my phone 24/7
I know, dude. I
because
gotta
it's
get your cell too after you get an email it to
yeah.
me or
I'll
something.
give
But
you
yeah, no,
absolutely.
that's amazing. And hey, I'm convinced. I hope we get you out there as much as possible. I really enjoyed talking to you. I think you definitely have a lot of heart into your business, and very knowledgeable. And I really appreciate all your support with Lawyer Stories, and would definitely like to continue. We're gonna have a good time in May, that's for sure.
Yep, sounds great.
And Jay, stay right there. Thanks again for coming on. Jay Kobak, 5-Star Legal Funding. Everybody, thanks for tuning in. Wherever
Thanks,
you are,
everybody.
wherever you are in the world today, enjoy yourselves.